So welcome to an introduction to video games creation. This is module 14, production. And we're going to give you a general introduction to games production. So we've covered art, engineering, design, but now we're going to look at production. And what is production in a games context? Well, I like to think of it as the mathematics that underpins the creativity. You're the conductor of the orchestra. But instead of just like it being over when the concert's over, you leave a massive piece of creative work at the end. And you've got to look into the future, all the different outcomes, the possibilities that the project could have. And you have to chart them like different tracks going into the future. And here's a headline for you. Most people think of production as boring, as uncreative, and they're wrong. In fact, it's very similar to cooking. It's all about preparation and timing, just like getting your ingredients, your elements, and at what point in the project or the preparation of the meal you use each piece. And nobody ever accuses cooking of being, or cooks and chefs of being uncreative. In fact, if you're going to sum up this fantasy style magic in one phrase, it would probably be, it's the cataloguing and ordering of future work. So in this module, we're going to be looking at some standard project life cycles, the role of a producer within those life cycles, and how to address project risk. And what will be the learning outcomes? You'll get a good grounding in the principles of production, a good foundational understanding of production terminology within games, and how it can relate to your chosen role, because you may still want to be an artist, an engineer, or a designer, but it's good to have that baseline understanding of those roles. So let's start with project lifecycle. So let's further define the space we're going to look at in this module. Most games are collaborative. They are kind of team affairs. They're complex. And we're going to look at the production role rather than the executive producer role. You may make a game on your own in your bedroom, but for what we're going to talk about today, we're talking about kind of like mid to large scale teams making the kind of games that we've looked at in some of the other modules. And even if you are making a one person game where you're working with a very, very small team, I think the principles in here are still pretty much valid. So most games companies will split a project into broadly discrete phases. And they may use different terminology. They might call them milestones, stages, gates, but they're broadly the same thing. And stage gates is one of my favorite phrases because it contains the sense that there will be a criteria, some sort of set of judgments about whether that gate has been passed. And gates are important because normally as you go through gates further into the project development, you're bringing more staff onto the team, which means of course you are incurring more financial cost. And here's 4 key classic standard gates. Concept, followed by pre-production, full-scale production, post-production, and then heading towards release. And of course with a lot of games, the release is just the beginning of the game's journey. There'll be updates, there'll be a community to build, and that might go on for a number of releases, for a number of years, a number of seasons, if you think about experiences like Minecraft or Fortnite, or even the kind of 12-month cycle of a Call of Duty game. But we will look at kind of post-release and building an audience in a different module. We're going to focus on the 4 key stages leading up to the first major release of your game. So let's look at the concept phase. And the concept phase can be broken down further into the high concept stage, the concept stage, and full concept. And in your studio, in your team, you might have a permanent concepting group or a more agile, fluid group where people come and go and leave depending on what project they're being involved with. But you'll probably have representatives from art, engineering, design, and production. On a small team, maybe you've got one of each. And as we touched on in the design modules, there's no set way of working. You may be, like this slide describes, be generating lots and lots of high concepts and then narrowing them down into concept documents and then fleshing them out even further into full concepts, and you might take 100 high concepts, narrow them down into 20 concepts, and then only have like maybe 2, 3, 4 full concepts which you decide to pursue any further. Or sometimes it can be very different, and you may be given a set brief to work with from a publisher, from another part of your company, another part of the organization, and that's what we're going to work with today in this module. And here's the brief that our concept team has been given by our imaginary studio head or publishing or marketing director. And it's as follows. It's a third-person action adventure. It's with a female protagonist. It's going to be primarily leading on console, and it's got a budget of X million dollars, a time frame of Y months. Perhaps it's being tied to a movie release, or there's a strategic reason it's got to hit a set date. And there's an overall kind of high-level theme of espionage set in the world of spies. And that high-level brief would be the thing that was delivered to the concept team and they would start working on. And if you've done module 10 about concept and character design, you'll be very familiar with this template that you've used to create your own game concept with. And this will be exactly the type of thing that our team would start to flesh out their idea with at a high level and take the brief and factor it through some of the things that are listed on this form here. And you can see from the example that I showed on module 10, this one is a digital version of a game that I was involved with several years ago. And you can see on one slide you can make a quite compelling case for your game concept. And I won't go through every point on this slide. If you'd like to study it in more detail, just pause the video and read through in your own time. And as a producer, you may be particularly interested in the points I've highlighted in red there. Like, the financials and what's it going to cost, what's the return on your investment, and the unique kind of features that make it easy to sell the game into the market. And here's what our imaginary team has come up with. They've worked quick and fast. That team, which is me, has taken a few little bits of font and text and ideas from other concepts that have been worked on before to get to this point as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But you can see how it answers the brief, and we will go through this in a little bit more detail. And so what have the team come up with? Well, it's the ultimate espionage action for the 21st century. It's going to be a third-person action adventure game where you get to become the coolest hitman, hitwoman, hit person on the planet. And you get to uncover a global conspiracy and track down your ultimate enemy, the Wolf, across 30 high-octane action missions. And what are the key features? The first is this idea of organic combat, open world, where the enemy AI is super reactive to every input the player makes. And then the second is the notion of kind of seamless vehicle war, where you can have vehicle combat across multiple terrains and the vehicle combat seamlessly integrates within on-foot combat sections. And then because you can see this is kind of a kind of female James Bond style concept, we're going to have this big living world, cinematic, reactive narrative, and these kind of big, rich environments. So you feel like you're playing in an interactive movie. And we were asked to make a console game. It's aimed at 12 to 30-year-old console gamers. And we know it's in that kind of Tomb Raider, Metal Gear space. And we know what the budget and the release is. And what we're asking for in this concept phase is just the money to get to full design, which is the next kind of gate in the kind of process of making our product. And you can see I made this game purely as an example, and I'm already getting excited about it, even though it's only for this module and it's never going to see the light of day. And of course, when we show such an amazing concept to our studio head who gave us the initial brief, we get an instant tick and it's on to the next phase, the kind of concept phase. And in this phase, we're just very quickly going to flesh out each of the key features and de-risk the project a little bit more before we go into the full concept. So we start with our initial slide, and key feature 1 has evolved to be termed the ultimate gunplay. And you can see it described on this slide here. And you can see the description and the work within it has got clearer, it's been more crystallized, and if we go through you can see it has improved. And following the rule of 3, we've broken down key feature 1 of 3, which is ultimate gunplay, into 3 subheadings where we detail out what we mean by that. And so the first is player freedom. We're going to seamlessly move between stealth, action, on foot, and vehicle play. The second is reactive AI. We want super adaptive AI, so it reacts to all of the player's actions and abilities to make a really, really believable world. And the third is a new one. It's offline and online in one. The play adapts to the player's numbers, and you can play it cooperatively, in multiplayer, or in single player, and complete the same mission in all 3 modes. So it's kind of very rich and adaptive kind of game world we're going to build. And the second key feature is now named Vehicle War. And again, you can see how it's been delineated and broken down in 3 subheadings underneath that. And the first subheading is all vehicle combat. You get to drive or ride any vehicle in the game scene. And the second is all-terrain combat. You can drive in every section of every environment. So if you get on a quad bike or a motorbike or a car, you can drive straight through the restaurant where the on-foot battle is taking place. And then building on that, it's a living environment. The world will respond in every way to every vehicle that you are using. And the third is trying to talk about how we're going to make that interactive movie. It's all about production. We're going to bring in AAA talent. We're going to get a professional script writer who we're going to try and tie it in a kind of cross-media way to have a tie-in film, comic, or TV show strategy. And when we present that to our imaginary studio boss, of course, because we want to get through each phase very quickly in this video, we get the green light to go to full concept. And this is the table of contents for what you would kind of ideally and normally provide in a full concept document. You can see it's divided into play and business development. So we're giving a much more detailed idea of what the play experience will be, and then a clear idea of how you're going to deliver that play experience on time and on budget. And you can see if we go down from the left, our original 1 sheet becomes our summary, our high concept becomes our 3 sheet, and then we detail out the 3 features in much more detail. So feature 1, the ultimate gunplay, would have a storyboard and a full description. Same with feature 2, same with feature 3. And then we'd go into the kind of characters, their abilities, their background. What about the NPCs, the non-player characters? And where is the game set? What are the locations? What are the environments? And very importantly, what are the short, mid and long-term experiences that are going to keep the player hooked and coming back for more? And then looking at the business development, very important. Who are the core team who are going to make this game and push it to completion? How long is it going to take that team to get to the finish line, to make the game? How much will that cost? And what extended team will we build around them? Will there be outsourcing? Will we have the people to actually deliver the project on time? And then what are the risks? That sounds like a risk. Are there any other risks? And importantly, what are the mitigations or solutions to those risks? Then, do we have the technology to make this game? What is the audience for this game? Do we know that in full detail? Have we done the market analysis? And what's the sales potential? If we make a great experience aimed at that audience and they buy it, what is the return on that game? And then in business development too, like next steps, deliverables, financial ask, for the next stage of the development. And business development too will form the basis of what you're trying to do in pre-production. Because of course, when all of the full concept is filled out, our studio head green lights it, other people involved in the project green light it, and we go into pre-production. And again, there are different ways to do things. For example, you might do prototyping in the concept phase, but in this example, and I think it's broadly true, you'll still be doing some prototyping in pre-production. We're going to go with this model where your pre-production phase is broken down into 3 distinct, discrete sub-phases. And the first of those is prototyping. The second is the vertical slice. And the third is first publishable. And you might hear different terminology for those, but they are reasonably common across a large part of the industry. And we'll go through those in detail, what they mean. But we're going to look at prototyping first. So what do we want to do in prototyping? Very simply, we want to prove the play. And prove the play is fun. If we go back to our full concept template, we want to, as quickly as possible, prove to our imaginary studio boss all of these features are going to be successful and are going to form part of a really great game experience. And so I'm going to simply want to prototype all of the things that I laid out in the high concept and the concept document that are the key features of the game. The ultimate gunplay and the 3 subheadings, the vehicle war, its 3 subheadings, and the living world. And then I'm going to want to do some more work on the overall game content that we're going to come to in a little bit. And working with the concept team, who are now probably expanded with a few more members of staff, I as the producer can work out, we need the engineering code team to make the prototypes within the grey box. We need the design to work on those prototypes delineated in the yellow box there, art in orange, and we're going to need another engineering team to work on general engine development to provide some of the features we need for the product. And again, if you want to go through all of the details, feel free to pause the slide and go through each sub box one by one. And all of that work, when it comes together, and we'll see how it comes together in the next video, creates these 3 demos. A demo of the gunplay, where, for example, our player infiltrates a Mexican drug lord's hacienda, and you can play in stealth or all-out action mode. Maybe there's multiple players and attempting it. So we have the online working, and then the vehicle war demo. The player drives through the jungle and a logging area before getting to the hacienda, and you can switch vehicles and do little bits on foot, chase on foot, but it showcases all of the kind of key principles we talked about for our kind of vehicle war. And then an engine test cutscene showing how the game is going to be cinematic, how our models have a certain level of detail and we can lip sync the cool script that we're kind of going to be creating. And these prototypes might be not at release quality, they might not have finished graphics, they might have pieces of engine code from old games we've previously made or old models, but the play is there and the play is fun, and when our studio head plays them, he's convinced that if all of those elements can work together in a coherent fashion, we've got a winning experience. And that is when you'd get your tick to go through from prototyping to the vertical slice. And what is the vertical slice? Very simply, it's all of those things put together into that coherent experience. So you can see it listed out here, and you could already see where it was going to on the previous slides. So we start with a mission briefing, a cutscene, your objectives, it's telling you what you should do, showcasing the cinematic moments within the game. Then the first part of the vertical slice is that forest drive, trying to get to the hacienda. Then you're at the hacienda, you have to infiltrate it, showing how the gunplay and the vehicle play integrates together. We're really going to add this kind of like showdown climactic ending to show you how the mission will reach a crescendo and an exciting climax. And from there, we've got a compelling experience, and we would get the green light for the next stage, the first publishable, which is generally the vertical slice, but done at a releasable quality. So it gives you a very clear idea about what this experience is going to be. And when our studio head sees Wolfstar delivered at that quality, wow, boom, he's blown away, and we are out of the pre-production phase into the next phase of the game. So what is the alpha phase? The alpha phase is very simply the whole game experience, playable from start to finish, with bugs and not always at releasable quality, but the whole experience there. So the vertical slice and the first publishable have provided proof that the experience will be good in a short form experience, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. This is the whole experience. And you can see here that our game has now got 9 levels and an intro, all the cutscenes are in, the dialogue is in, the script, everything has been finished. And similarly to the relationship between the vertical slice and the first publishable, beta is the alpha at release quality. It's finished, everything is there. It can still have some bugs, but the game is at release quality. And then in the post-production phase, it's all about getting rid of those bugs and building up for your release. So artists might drop off the project and start building and creating marketing materials for the game, and everyone else will be starting to just iron out bugs and make the game, more and more playable. And as a producer, you'll be tracking the bugs. So here you can see a very simple graph for our Wolfstar game, charting what our target is, and then in blue how we're actually over time getting rid of the bugs and hitting what's known as the DDD, the drop dead date, for when all the bugs have to be ironed out, because you need to then go in to release the game. And when you release the game, the whole world has the same reaction that our studio boss had when he saw the vertical slice in the first publishable, because you've made an absolutely excellent game experience. So those are some of the key phases that you can have in a development cycle. And in the next video, we're going to look at what the role of the producer is within that development cycle.